In the Shadows of the Dragon Queen, sorcerers and warlocks are allowed in the Towers of High Sorcery. This is a serious departure from the lore of older editions, and we think it needs some backstory to make it seem reasonable. In older editions, warlocks weren't really spellcasters and didn't qualify, and sorcerers were considered to be using primal magic, which was treated as dangerous at best and condemned at worst. Only the red-robed wizards were accepting of sorcerers. The black-robed studied sorcerers to learn what they could and frequently murdered them afterwards, and white-robed wizards attempted to teach them the arts of wizardry, and if they refused, declared them renegades, which were often also killed. Half-elves are also an interesting race in Dragonlance. Not really accepted by the races of either parent, and often feel like outcasts, although some do become diplomats between the two races. Playing a half-elf is its own challenge. Today we're making a hero that faces both challenges. Hi everyone, and welcome to a magical episode of
The Dungeon Crashers.
I'm Guy.
And I'm Zapeel. Before we get started, please like this video, subscribe to our channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss out on the rest of our series about playing Dragonlance in 5th edition. Now, we said we were going to the Clever Kender with this video, but we had some technical difficulties with that build, so we're going with this one instead. It's unusual for a half-elf to be raised by both parents. Once relations between elves and humans were strictly forbidden, and half-elves often resulted from human male forcing themselves upon elven women they encountered in the forest, or occasionally a human woman that being seduced by an elven man. In both cases, they were typically raised in the society by their mother. While relations between human and elf are not as taboo as they once were, they are still rare and frowned upon. They aren't outright condemned. Our heroes' parents were and still are very much in love. Although not married by the standards of either of their cultures, they are committed to one another and were happy to have their child together. Our hero's mother was a wizard of the white robes, and her father is a Cognesti ranger. Although young by elf standards, he is an experienced adventurer and companion to his wizard partner. Knowing that neither his lover nor his child would be accepted among either of their peoples, the pair retired to the forest where they lived a simple life with their child. Her father hunting and foraging for supplies, while her mother used magic to meet their other needs, sometimes venturing to a nearby human village to buy what they needed using the considerable wealth they had acquired on their adventures. Half-elves are medium-sized creatures with a move speed of 30 feet. Like their elven parents, half-elves have dark vision out to 60 feet, and they have fey heritage, giving them advantage on saves to avoid being charmed, and they are unable to be put to sleep by magic. Typical half-elves get 2 skills of their choice, but there is a variant half-elves that get an alternate ability based on their elven parent. Since wood elves are the closest to Cognasti, our hero gets elven weapon training, giving her proficiency with long swords, short swords, long bows, and short bows. She spent much of her childhood hunting in the forest with her father, and though she never developed the strength to properly wield a long sword, she became very skilled with the longbow and short sword. She also speaks both Common and Elven, as both her parents spoken in her home. Half-elves get a +1 bonus to 2 ability scores of their choice and a +2 bonus to charisma. Using the point buy, we put an 8 on strength. Our hero has the slight build of the elves, but lacked the wiry muscle of the Cognasti father. She also inherited elven grace, and we put a 15 on dexterity, making it 16 with 1 bonus point. She is also very fit despite her small size. And we put a 13 on constitution, making it 14 with the other bonus point. We put a 10 on intelligence and wisdom because we don't have the points for more, and her average scores explain why she is unable to master her mother's wizardry or her father's ranger skills. Lastly, we put a 15 on charisma, making it 17 with the racial bonus. This is the source of her magic, and she will need to have it as high as possible. When her powers first manifested, her mother tried to train her in the ways of wizardry, but she had no talent for it. Her powers seemed to draw directly from the moons of Kirin. This greatly concerned her mother, as the order frowned on primal magic. Her mother was also concerned because the child could see the black moon Nuatari, which is normally only visible to dark wizards. Even though she lacked skill with wizardry, there is no doubt her magical power, so her mother gave her the same training that she would give wizard apprentice, in hopes that the mages of the high sorcery discovered her, they wouldn't automatically consider her a renegade. She begins with the Mage of High Sorcery background, which gives a new background from the Shadows of the Dragon Queen, and it gives the skills History and Arcana, as well as 2 languages, and she knows Dwarven and Kender. Once recognized by the Order, she will also receive unlimited lodging at the Tower of High Sorcery, and also gain a night's lodging with any member of the Order. It also gives her the initiative of the High Sorcery feat, which grants a number of abilities. First, she gains a cantrip from the wizard list, and she chooses Minor Illusion. She also chooses a moon that most guides her destiny, and she chooses Lunatari. This grants her 2 spells known from among Featherfall, Color Spray, Long Strider, and Disguise Self. She chooses Long Strider to help her move quickly through the forest, and Disguise Self to blend in with the humans or elves that might disapprove of her heritage. She can cast these spells once per day without expending a spell slot, and can cast them with any spell slot she has. The casting ability is her choice of Intelligence, Wisdom, and Charisma, and she chooses Charisma.
She begins play as a first level sorcerer. Sorcerers gain their subclass at first level, and she chooses Lunar Sorcery. Lunar Sorcery is a new subclass found in Shadows of the Dragon Queen, and it grants abilities from each of Kryn's gods of magic, which are represented by 3 moons. The white moon, Solinari, which is the god of good magic, the red moon, Lunatari, which is the god of neutral magic, and the black moon, Nuatari, which is the god of evil magic. Lunar sorcerers draw power from all 3 moons, which is very different from the mages of high sorcery, which draw their power from only one of the gods of magic. In the subclass description, these are called new moon, crescent moon, and full moon, so that it can be used in any setting, but I'm using it the way it would be used in Dragonlance. They gain bonus spells known at each spell level, 1 from each of the moons. At first level, she gains Shield from Solinari, Color Spray from Lunatari, and Ray of Sickness from Nuatari. After each long rest, she can choose 1 moon to focus her power, and once before her next long rest, she can cast 1 spell granted by that moon without expending a spell slot. She also gains Moonfire, which gives her the Sacred Flame cantrip, and when she casts it, she may target 2 creatures instead of 1 if they are within 5 feet of each other. As a sorcerer, she gains spellcasting beyond this. She learns 4 cantrips and 2 first-level spells from the sorcerer list. Her casting ability for these spells is Charisma, and the save DC is 8, plus her Charisma and proficiency modifiers. She can use an arcane focus for her spells instead of material components that lack gold piece value. For a cantrip, she chooses Booming Blade. She's skilled with a short sword, and this will make it more effective since she won't be getting extra attack. For times when she preferred to avoid melee combat, which will be often, she takes Shocking Grasp and Thunderclap. Lastly, she takes Friends. Although she is naturally persuasive, sometimes a little magical boost can come in handy. For spells, she takes Sleep and Mage Armor. She doesn't choose a range attack cantrip as she has her Longbow and her Moonfire to deal with enemies. She learns 2 skills from the Sorcerer list, and she chooses Persuasion and Insight. Her father instructed her that those outside the family might treat her harshly because of her ancestry, so when dealing with outsiders, she has learned to speak diplomatically and read people's intentions. She is also proficient with Charisma and Constitution saves. At second level, she becomes a second level sorcerer, getting Font of Magic, which gives her sorcery points that she can use to create extra spell slots. Later, she will get more uses for these. She starts with 2 and gets more as she gains level in sorcerer. She can learn another first level spell, and she chooses Silvery Barbs for an additional protective reaction. She also gets a 3rd first level spell slot. At 3rd level, she becomes a 3rd level sorcerer. She gets a 4th first level spell slot and 2 2nd level spell slots, and can learn another spell of up to 2nd level. She takes Phantasmal Force, that creates an illusion in the mind of a creature that can be anything she can imagine. If the creature fails an intelligence save, it believes the illusion so completely that it will rationalize any inconsistencies that would normally give away the illusion. Additionally, if the illusion is of something that could deal damage and the creature is within 5 feet of the illusion, it takes 1d6 psychic damage. The illusion lasts for 1 minute, depending on her concentration. She also gains 3 spells from Lunar Sorcery. From Solinari, she gains Lesser Restoration, which is a nice spell to get for free, especially since it isn't normally available to sorcerers. From Lunatari, she gains Alter Self, which allows her to change her shape. She can change appearance as with Disguise Self, but it's a physical change instead of an illusion. She can also transform to gain fins and gills, giving her a swim speed and the ability to breathe underwater, or she can grow fangs, claws, horns, or other natural weapons that deal a d6 damage of a type appropriate to the weapon, slashing for claws, piercing for horns or bites, and bludgeoning for hooves. From Nuatari, she learns Blindness Deafness. Deafening creatures doesn't have many combat applications in 5e, but can be useful in other situations. Blindness is a very powerful effect that handicaps physical attackers and all but cripples spellcasters. She also gains meta magic, which lets her use her sorcery points to alter the effects of her spells. She gains 2 meta magic options, and she chooses Extended Spell, which lets her spend 1 sorcery point to double the duration of the spell she is casting with a maximum of 24 hours. This will be particularly helpful with Mage Armor. For her second, she chooses Quicken Spell, which lets her spend 2 sorcery points to change the casting time of a spell from 1 action to a bonus action. This works with cantrips as well, so with Moonfire she could target up to 4 creatures, or 2 creatures twice, and she could also Quicken Booming Blade, which would let her make 2 attacks with her short sword. It's important to remember that the rules specify that if you cast a leveled spell as a bonus action, you can't cast a leveled spell with your action. As her magic becomes more powerful, her mother begins to worry that the mages of high sorcery might discover her and consider her a renegade. Being a mage of high sorcery herself, she knows how serious that can be, but she also knows the perils of taking the trial. The trial is incredibly difficult, and failure results in death. Her worries were compounded by the fact that her daughter uses primal magic, which the mages consider dangerous and may be unwilling to admit her at all. So she took our hero aside and gave her the choice. She can travel to the Tower of High Sorcery and risk the test, or she can stop practicing her magic and pursue training with her father as a ranger. Our hero loves her magic, as natural to her as breathing or speaking, and she can't imagine her life without it, so she says she will face the trial. Her mother was saddened but unsurprised by this decision and was prepared. She told our hero that she was allowed to take a companion with her to help her reach the tower where the test of high sorcery is performed, and she decides that her father should accompany her. So the two prepared for the journey and set forth. In older editions of the game, a wizard needed to locate the tower, survive the travel through the magical forest that guards the tower, and then take the test. In 5e, they've made that easier, and now a wizard will come to the candidate to administer the test. This is supposed to make it easier for the DM, so they don't have to prepare a whole adventure for the wizard. I, of course, hate this change and will be ignoring it. The journey was simple enough. Her mother had used both research and divination to locate the tower and sent our hero off with as much advice about taking the test as she could. After that, her father's wood lore and tracking skills made locating the tower relatively easy. Navigating the Guardian Forest was more difficult. The magic of the forest allowed her through, as it recognized her as a candidate, but even so it was a difficult trek. When they arrived, a mage greeted them and gave them lodging and told her she had 1 day to prepare for the test and gave her no further explanation. She has never spoken of what transpired during the test, not even to her parents, but it clearly changed her. Her innocence and optimism were replaced with cynicism and a tinge of sadness. Also, to her father's surprise, she emerged from the testing chamber wearing a red robe. He had assumed she would wear the white robes like her mother, but he didn't ask, knowing that the decision is very personal, and was just relieved she wasn't wearing black.
At 4th level, she becomes a 4th level sorcerer. She gets an ability score improvement in her feat, and she's going to take the Adept of the Red Robes feat. This is another new feat from Shadows of the Dragon Queen. To take it, the character must be at least 4th level and have the Initiate of High Sorcery feat, and have chosen Lunatari. The Order has recognized her commitment to magic and keeping balance in all things, and she is granted her 2 abilities. First is Insight Magic, which lets her learn a 2nd level spell that must be illusion or transmutation, and she can cast this spell once per day without expending a spell slot, and can cast it with any spell slot she has. The casting ability is the same as she chose for the Initiate of High Sorcery feat, which is Charisma. She chooses Spike Growth from the Ranger list. It's an excellent battlefield control spell and not normally available to sorcerers. She also gains Magic Balance. When she rolls a 9 or less on an attack roll or an ability check, she can make it a 10 and do this a number of times per day equal to her proficiency bonus. She gains a 3rd 2nd level spell slot and can learn another cantrip and another spell that can be up to 2nd level. For the cantrip, she takes Prestidigitation, and for the spells, she takes Mirror Image for a strong magical defense. At 5th level, she becomes a 5th level sorcerer. She gains 2 3rd level spell slots and can learn of a spell of up to 3rd level, and she chooses Lightning Bolt. She has so far avoided heavily destructive spells to prefer Subtlety, but her experience in the tower has changed her and made her more aggressive. From Lunar Sorcery, she gains Dispel Magic from Solinari, Vampiric Touch from Nuatari, and Phantom Steed from Lunatari. Her cantrips become more powerful. Her damaging cantrips gain an additional dice of damage, and Booming Blade now deals 1d8 to the target hit and 2d8 if they move before the start of her next turn. As she and her father set forth on the journey home, she removed her red robes and stored them in her pack, replacing them with her well-worn traveling cloak. Surprised, her father asked her why she didn't want to wear the symbol of her order. She replied that she has discovered that, aside from her mother, she doesn't care much for wizards. Her father laughed and told her that it was understandable, and her mother didn't really like most of them either. The journey home was not uneventful. They passed through a region where humans were engaging in some sort of war amongst themselves, which was not uncommon among humans, and her father suggested that they keep to the forest and avoid any trouble. After a time, they came across a band of soldiers attacking a village. The village defenders seemed sturdy enough, but were outnumbered. Her father paused to assess the situation, but our hero did not hesitate, and unleashed a fearsome blast of lightning against the invaders, then moved swiftly to battle, shrouding herself in mage armor and drawing her sword, saying only a single word, "Takesis." Stunned at her actions, her father hesitated just for a bare moment before pulling his bow and conjuring a quiver of enchanted arrows to engage the troops that are now his enemies. As he fired his arrows, he saw what his daughter had seen. The attacking troops bore the standard of the Dragon Queen. With their help, the defenders were able to rally and repel the invaders, leaving only a few alive that managed to flee. The villagers thanked them for their help, but seemed wary of the elven warrior. He was worried that they would be even more distrusting of his half-elven daughter, but saw that she had shrouded herself in illusion, appearing as a human woman wearing the robes of the Red Wizard. The grateful people gave them welcome and lodging for the evening, but did not seem to be sad that they left the following morning. At 6th level, she becomes a 6th level sorcerer. From Lunar Sorcery, she gains the ability the Waxing and Waning. As a bonus action, she can change which moon is focusing her power by spending one sorcery point, and she can now cast one 1st level spell that was granted from each moon without using a spell slot, as long as she is focused on the moon that granted that spell. She can still only cast each spell this way once per long rest. She also gains Lunar Boon. The moon she is focused on affects her metamagic. When focused on Solinari, she can reduce the sorcery points she spends on metamagic by 1 when casting abjuration and divination spells. She can do the same for evocation and necromancy spells when focused on Nuatari, and divination transmutation when focused on Lunatari. She can do this a number of times equal to a proficiency modifier each long rest. She also gains a third level spell slot and can learn another spell of up to 3rd level, and she chooses Counterspell to protect against enemy spellcasters.
Their actions against the soldiers of the Dragon Queen did not go unnoticed. They found themselves being shadowed by foul spirits. Though formidable enough, they were no match for an experienced Cognesti tracker and a sorcerer of the Red Robes. The creatures were particularly harmed by his daughter's moonfire that seemed to fill them with fear. Her father worried that they had gotten themselves involved in a conflict that doesn't concern them and only bring them harm, but his daughter seemed unconcerned, saying that one of the things she dislikes about wizards is they place burdens upon her, and she would say no more. At 7th level, she becomes a 7th level sorcerer, and she gains a single 4th level spell slot and may learn a spell of up to 4th level, and she chooses Storm Sphere. It creates a 20-foot radius area of swirling winds that count as difficult terrain and deal 2d6 bludgeoning damage to creatures in the area when it appears, and to any creature that end their turn in it. The creatures get a strength save to avoid this damage, and as a bonus action on each of her turns, she can cause a bolt of lightning to strike a target within 60 feet of the sphere, dealing 4d6 lightning damage on a successful ranged spell attack. This attack roll has advantage on creatures inside the sphere. If cast at higher levels, the damage from both effects increases by 1d6 for each spell level beyond 4th. She also gains the spells Death Ward from Solinari, Confusion from Nuatari, and Hallucinatory Terrain from Lunatari. At 8th level, she becomes an 8th level sorcerer, getting an ability score improvement on her feat, and drawing upon her elven ancestry, she takes the Fey Touch feat. This allows her to increase her charisma to 18, and she learns the Misty Step spell, and a divination or enchantment spell at 1st level, and she takes Hunter's Mark. Hex would be a better choice, as it also applies to spell attacks, but Hunter's Mark suits her background and personality, and unlike some casters, she's not going to be reserving her concentration for this, as she uses several concentration spells. Instead, she's going to use this when she's going to be fighting with bow and sword. Combining this with Quick and Booming Blade can make her a credible melee fighter, and it will make her bow worth using despite not having extra attack. She can cast each of these spells once per long rest without using a spell slot. She also gains an additional 4th level spell slot and can learn another spell of up to 4th level, and she chooses Greater Invisibility in order to move undetected and to confound enemies in battle. Upon her return, her mother was relieved that she survived the test, but also concerned in the changes she saw in her child. Knowing well that the trial of high sorcery can have a profound effect on the petitioner, she was careful not to pry too deeply. She did have some conversation with her daughter, and though the girl spoke little of the details of her test, she said that she saw many things, both past and future, things that perhaps she was not supposed to see. She said the wizards have done terrible things to secure control over magic, and though the white robes had noble motives, their methods were as questionable as those of the black. She felt compelled to take the red robes and seek to restore the balance between wizardry and primal magic. This concerned her mother greatly. She could not disagree with her daughter's assessment of things. She knew well what the orders have done in the past to those who use magic outside of their supervision. But she feared what might happen if her daughter came into opposition with the order. At 9th level, our hero becomes a 9th level sorcerer. She gains a 3rd 4th level spell slot and a single 5th level spell slot, and can learn a spell of up to 5th level. And she chooses Cone of Cold for another way to battle groups of enemies. From Lunar Sorcery, she gains the spells Rary's Telepathic Bond from Solinari, Hold Monster from Nuatari, and Mislead from Lunatari. At 10th level, she becomes a 10th level sorcerer. She gains an additional 5th level spell slot and can learn another spell of up to 5th level, and she chooses the spell Teleportation Circle. As a mage of high sorcery, she has access to teleportation circles throughout the world, and has reason to think she will need them. She also learns another cantrip and chooses Ray of Frost as an option to her bow against targets that her bow would be less effective against. She also learns 2 more meta magic options, and she chooses Heightened Spell to make her spells harder to resist, and Careful Spell to reduce unintended damage from Cone of Cold and Lightning Bolt. She can also retrain a spell, and Sleep has probably lost its usefulness by now, so she trades it for Dominate Person. After a few years, she suddenly informed her parents that she needed to depart. She offered little explanation, only saying that she had an obligation to fulfill. Her father objected, wanting to know more and also wanting to accompany her, but her mother, knowing the ways of mages, calmed her mate and sent her daughter off with good wishes. In the years they have lived in their forest home, her mother had created many magical structures, including the tower in which they made their home. One of these was a teleportation circle, and she had instructed her daughter in its use to return home whenever she needed. She also taught her the means of accessing other circles belonging to the order, and sent her child off with good wishes and some useful items of power.
At 11th level, she becomes an 11th level sorcerer. She gains a 6th level spell slot and can learn a spell of up to 6th level, and she chooses Mass Suggestion. And she can retrain a spell, and she switches Phantasmal Force for Mental Prison, which is a more powerful alternative. Her cantrips improve again, adding an additional dice of damage, which applies to both effects of Booming Blade. She no longer receives additional spells from Lunar Sorcery. At 12th level, she becomes a 12th level sorcerer, getting an ability score improvement on her feat, and she increases her charisma to 20. Her travels take her to the abode of a wizard of the black robes that had communicated with her by magic. Although he was a black-robed wizard and a necromancer, he was no friend to Takesis, and he contacted our hero because the forces of the Dragon Queen had issued a bounty on her destruction, and he wished to warn her rather than collect. Not wanting to put her family at risk from the Dragon Queen's minions, she set forth to visit the wizard at his invitation. She considered the possibility that the Black Robes was luring her into a trap, but she was confident in her power. As it turned out, the wizard truly wished her no harm, and informed her that Takesis was gathering forces in order to spread her power over the world once more. Armies were marching and dragons were stirring. The wizard told her as much as he knew of the movements of the Dragon Queen's followers and proposed an alliance to counter them. Seeing the peril ahead, she agreed to the alliance, and the two used the wizard teleportation circles to travel far across the continent to the lands of the Dwarven Kingdom, where the armies of the Dragon Queen were gathering. At 13th level, she becomes a 13th level sorcerer. She gains a single 7th level spell slot and can learn a spell of up to 7th level, and she chooses Prismatic Spray. She sees a great deal of conflict ahead and needs a powerful weapon. At 14th level, she becomes a 14th level sorcerer, and from Lunar Sorcery, she gains Lunar Empowerment. That gives her abilities depending on which moon she is focusing her power. While focused on Solinari, she can use a bonus action to spread bright light in a 10-foot radius and dim light in another 10 feet, and can dismiss it with another bonus action. While within the bright light, creatures of her choice gain advantage on investigation and perception checks. When focused on Nuatari, she has advantage on stealth checks, and when in darkness, attack rolls have disadvantage against her. And when focused on Lunatari, she has resistance to radiant and necrotic damage. At 15th level, she becomes a 15th level sorcerer. She gains an 8th level spell slot and can learn a spell of up to 8th level, and she chooses Sunburst, which can blind creatures and burn them with radiant damage. She can also retrain a spell, and she retrains Teleportation Circle for teleport.
Arriving at their destination, they are greeted by a wizard of the white robes. He was expecting them as they had asked for permission to use his teleportation circle. He was assisting the forces defending the city from the forces of the Dragon Queen, and was grateful for them coming to help. Surprisingly, the two wizards were looking to her for leadership. This surprised her, as she assumed they would want to take the lead, but it seems her power was greater than theirs, and she already had experience fighting the Dragon Queen's troops. She reluctantly took the lead, and with the three mages of high sorcery backing them, the defenders were able to defeat the attacking forces. It was a terrible battle nonetheless. The enemy forces had a wizard of the black robes on their side, and many of their soldiers were ogres and even fouler things. But ultimately, the combined might of the three wizards prevailed. At 16th level, she becomes a 16th level sorcerer and gets an ability score improvement on her feat, and she increases her constitution to 16. As a sorcerer, she is proficient in constitution saves, but uses a lot of concentration spells, so constitution is important. And the hit points will be very welcome also. At 17th level, she becomes a 17th level sorcerer and gains a single 9th level spell slot and can learn a spell of up to 9th level. And she takes Wish, as this is the only 9th level spell she will learn by leveling. This is the only real choice because of its power and versatility. She can also retrain a spell, and if you want another 9th level spell, you could choose a lower level spell that isn't seeing much use. But her spell selection is pretty solid, so we're going to keep it as it is. Our hero and her new allies take the offensive against the forces of the Dragon Queen, gathering around them warriors and other heroes who join the battle against Takesis. In time, she returns to her home to assure her parents that she is well and finds that they too have been battling the Dragon Queen's forces. Although she has surpassed her mother's power, her mother is still a powerful wizard, and her father is unmatched as an archer and tracker. They and their small band of warriors come to join her in battle. At 18th level, she becomes an 18th level sorcerer, and from Lunar Sorcery, she gains Lunar Phenomenon. As a bonus action on her turn, she can tap into power drawn from the moon that her power is focused on. Also, when she uses her Waxing and Waning ability to change the moon she's focused on, she can activate the ability of the new moon as part of the same bonus action. After using one of these abilities, she can't use that ability again until she finishes a long rest or uses 5 sorcery points to use it again. From Solinari, she gets the ability to radiate a flash of moonlight. Each creature of her choice within 30 feet must make a constitution save or be blinded until the end of its next turn. In addition, one creature of her choice in the area regains 3d8 hit points. From Nuatari, she radiates gloom in a 30-foot radius for a moment. Creatures of her choice in the area must make a dexterity save or take 3d10 points of necrotic damage and have their speed reduced to 0 until the end of its next turn, and she becomes invisible until the end of her next turn or until after she makes an attack or casts a spell. From Lunatari, she gains the ability to teleport to an open space within 60 feet and can bring along a willing creature that is within 5 feet of her, and it arrives in a space within 5 feet of her destination, and both she and the other creature gain resistance to all damage until the start of her next turn. At 19th level, she becomes a 19th level sorcerer, gaining an ability score improvement on her feat, and she increases her dexterity at 18 to help both her armor class and attacks with her weapons. At 20th level, she becomes a 20th level sorcerer and gains Sorceress Restoration, allowing her to regain 4 expended sorcery points whenever she finishes a short rest. Lunar Sorcery is an excellent subclass, giving more spells known than any other subclass, and giving a number of free uses of those spells. The abilities it grants are nice as well. Moonfire makes Sacred Flame a useful cantrip, and the Lunar Boons can help stretch your sorcery points. And at high level, Lunar Phenomena are very strong abilities. The feats she has taken also give her additional spells beyond what a sorcerer normally has, and also give free uses of those spells. What we have is a caster that is powerful and flexible. Not all of her free spells are especially powerful, but have good uses in the right situations, and can give her utilities that sorcerers often can't spare a spell known for. We took a few liberties with the lore of Dragonlance, the 5e version in particular, but we tried to stay true to the spirit of the world of Krynn. We hope you enjoyed it, and will tell us about it in the comments below, along with any questions, suggestions, or build ideas. And we hope you join us next week when we get back to the Kinder build. Until then, cheers.